Om Shanti. Good morning. This is a video on true happiness. So the reason why we have to put the word true in the subject matter is because there's a understanding of happiness as in a happiness that is temporary. So it does give some fruit, and I guess if someone has enough temporary attainments, they can exist rather than live, but it's not really living in a true state of happiness, because the state of happiness changes from one mode to another, one mood to another. It relies on a lot of external stimuli, the temporary happiness, because we're always in hope that things don't change, or if they do change, then they go on the up and up rather than the down and down trend. And that's the nature of life, really, where it goes up and then it goes down, and everything in this world is changing very quickly at times. And there was always the hope that it would progress in a spike fashion and then digress in a mini spike. So we were happy to accept the disappointments along the way, as long as the appointments take us to a different point of the graph, take us up and up and up. And the whole of the mass media that goes on in the world, worldwide, is to do with the more that you have, the more you'll be, or the more you get, the more you'll feel accomplished, the more you'll feel that feeling of success within us. And in reality, it's in actual fact, when we talk about learning our lessons well on earth, it's lessening. So it's to me, it's the number one lesson, is that you have to lessen everything to live a more simple life. And then you still need something that's there to actually take up the slack, so that there is this sparkle of happiness inside. There are certain people in India called Sannyasis. Shankaracharya was their main founder, who taught sannyas, and they didn't believe in happiness. They believe in peace, but they don't believe in happiness because of its the unknown factors, the amount of suffering that takes place in an external world of happiness, and that when happiness are built on desires, which is what human nature has become, basically very full of different associated desires according to what I believe my role needs to make me happy, what should come my way that would define a success story where I'll be happy the whole day through. And I think that people actually got to a point where they would say, well, if I have a certain amount of happiness, then that will do, that will satisfy me, because I'm not greedy. But in reality, very often no happiness comes. And the reality of it is that the quest is much more fulfilling than the actual conquest, because the quest to achieve happiness is still the hope and the looking forward to the joy of having what a person needs to have, whether it be to do with their family position, their position of the world. You know, the more that you have, the more people will respect you for what you've got, and that's the way to win respect in the external way of seeing everything, which is not the true happiness that we're going to talk about today, but this is the temporary happiness we're only covering. The Sannyasis didn't believe in it, so they left their home and their family, and they went to the forests and the jungles, and they did tapasya, deep meditation very often on moksha, which is eternal liberation, a state of mind which is still, stable, and very often empty as well, empty of all thoughts. So when you get the thought for happiness, it's just a seed at first, and then when you see other people enjoying what they've got, it gives you a taste for it. And so that's what it does. First comes in the mind, a desire, and then it happens to the intellect, is that it starts to get a taste for those things, and then the intellect starts to churn and spin how to achieve those things. What must I do in my life to be happy? And then, of course, when the quest, you've gone through the quest of attaining that. I remember a man saying about his wife, really, he doesn't feel the same about her anymore because the quest is over. In other words, he'd already won her, and so he was looking at other females. And nowadays it goes both ways, where the female also does that as well, when they have this kind of familiarity breeds contempt, but you can't live with them, can't live without them. So it's a catch-22 what people are in, because it's not true happiness. So they exist rather than they live. And when you get the situations where I was watching this some time ago with this arranged marriages, whereby the mother wanted the son's arranged wedding to coincide with the birth of a child of a daughter, or daughter-in-law, her other son. And so it had to line up. So she was pressurising the other son to get married and saying, you're the cause of my stress and you're the cause of my despair, because there's been so many girls that I've shown to you and you've gone out with for the evening, and you still have knocked them all back. And each time he found one reason or another that didn't fit his criteria, his list of what would make the perfect wife. And a lot of it was to do with it satisfied the mother. So if she was getting married to him, to her, that would be fine. But as it was her son that was getting married, there were other hidden things where he felt a bit bored, or she wasn't interesting enough. So the picture showed the skin depth beauty, and when he went out with her, he learned about her personality. But of course, you don't really know someone by sitting for one evening or even 100 evenings. You know someone more when you actually live with them, and you realise how much of a negativity they've got and how much of a positivity. And it's all to do with common bonds, and even that, there's a lot of tolerance involved and patience. Otherwise they wouldn't say we have to work at it. So the mother was putting him under unnecessary duress, so he was actually in a situation where eventually he did marry the woman, but it was because of a peer pressure that was passed down. That will make her happy, so it will make me happy. That kind of syndrome was there. And it actually becomes quite obsessional with people's desires for happiness, and the more they work towards it, the more they seem to be accomplishing that. Of course, it's open to karma as well, because if the person hasn't got that in their fortune as a reward from their past, it doesn't matter how much they've done. If they haven't been charitable in the past, they're not going to get the supply line, because karma creates the supply line. So if I'm putting the goodness out, if I'm doing the charity, if I'm actually investing my kindness, my love, my gratitude, a healthy attitude, all the things that I'm investing, they're coming back to me. But also you get situations where people have got everything and they can't think of anything else to achieve, and they're still not happy. And that's the proof that happiness is coming from inside rather than outside. And what people do is, by investing their negativity, their anger, their frustration. She was saying to her son that, I'll cut you dead if you don't, toe the line, if you don't make your decision. So that kind of investment she's creating, the happiness that she gets from her son being married to who she wanted to marry, him to marry and have grandchildren by them, will be only short-lived, because the human soul is using up its happiness. It's actually draining itself of happiness. So the more it's under the influence of desires, it feels like happiness is charging us. But actually happiness of an external nature is discharging us, because you've got a store of happiness which is based on your past karmic actions, the actions that you performed, and according to the consciousness that you perform them in as well, happiness will meet and greet. But happiness would meet and greet anyway. It wouldn't need to be arranged. I wouldn't need to try to force something. And so you've got this ability inside of you to create happiness, or the ability of the outside to destroy happiness, which is why we call it temporary happiness, because it has a sell-by date. It finishes at a certain point in time. The mood will be elated, the joy will be elated for that period of time, not a second more or a second less. It's that accurate that karma is absolute, complete. And so what you're doing is actually understanding how volatile and vulnerable you are by processing, before you process true happiness. And the way to do that really is that all the things that give you security in your life, basically line them up in your mind in this room that you're sitting in. Imagine them in a very physical, real state. So you've got all your money that's in the bank, and that includes any money you've got hidden away. Absolutely all of it is put down in front of you. Imagine you're sitting on a very comfortable park bench, and you're going to have all your money put in front of you. It's an experiment to see how vulnerable and how volatile your happiness is, because when you know how vulnerable and volatile your happiness is, you can also work towards inner happiness. But you have to know the reality. So your money is no longer a number in a bank. You've emptied the bank. And bear in mind, it's only in our world of imagination, so it's not real, so don't panic too much. The money that you have, imagine it's 15,000, 5,000, 10,000, but every single note of it and coinage is in front of you. There are people passing by, and you're not allowed to touch that money. You've also got any certifications that you've got, that prove you're a professor or a engineer or a teacher, and that certification is lying in front of you. This is your worth in the world of illusion. So that's going to go in front of you, and it's just lying on the ground. The wind is blowing, and there's nothing on the computer or in any kind of files that say that any kind of duplicates. They're the only certification that show your value, basically. And these are the things that are giving you false sense of security. So you've got your certificates, your academic certificates that you've established and succeeded in. You've also got your family members. All your family and friends are all just around you. And your house is over there, just in the distance. So what you know is that your money, it will get taken. If you fall asleep after a while, people will see that money there and start to take it for themselves. And once one person starts to take it, another person will join in because they see that you're not interfering. It's the experiment of non-interference. So you're not allowed to actually interfere with the process that's about to happen. And look, there's your certificates, and it's windy, so they're blowing in the wind and going in different places. You've got all your family and friends, and you've already been told that there are people going to come and abduct them today sometime, and that refugees are moving into your house sometime today. And in the meantime, you've got to give to your mind, your own mind, what the opposite feeling of what you're feeling. So if it starts to feel insecure, you've got to treat your mind like a newborn baby, like something that's very volatile, very vulnerable, needs your peace, needs your patience, needs your love, needs your security. It all has to come from you to it. So the family has now been abducted. They've been put in the back of a van and driven away. It might be in celebration. Who knows? Refugees have just moved into your house. No mortgage on the house. Just paying the bills day in, day out. So all these are the elephants that you've bought. The elephants, you've now got to feed them. And the last part, and the most important part, by the way, there's only £5 left, or a few hundred rupees left of the notes, because they're blowing away in the wind and other people are gathering round and taking them. And as any peacelessness you feel, you're giving that peace, that solace, that detachment. That's a biggie, the detachment from what you are and what you have, the difference between the two. And the last thing is that your body has got cancer, and it's also got coronavirus. Remember, these are only imaginary things, and you're giving the mind that peace, that lightness, that love, to stop the mind from suffering according to the body. Of course, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So you're actually supporting your mind while the whole of your life is being removed from in front of you. The more you imagine it to be a reality, it doesn't mean it will happen, but the more you would be aware of the feelings that the mind is taking support of and is dependent on. And when you create that level of separation, then the joy starts to emerge from the true security of the self. So you've got other things as well whereby your faith in God, you'll have no money for food, but your faith in God has to be paramount, that He will find a way to feed me. Because this is a very positive spiritual thing that I'm doing, and God loves a pure desire. God loves pure emotion, an emotion that's not dependent on the external and is only dependent on your own innate properties. So of course sometimes and very often happiness isn't the actual thing that you're looking for. You're looking for peace, and you will only have that peace when you give your mind that peace and you take support of the peace that's coming from the ocean of peace. And this security isn't just for the here and now, it's an eternal fortune of security in which as the mind, so the matter. So it's not as the matter, so the mind. That's a state of subservience. It's as the mind, so the matter. So you've got to become aware of yourself also from the inner joy of being a master creator, your own fortune writer, your own author of your own destiny. And there was a lady that was dying of cancer. She had 2 weeks to live, and a diamond necklace got either stolen or it was misplaced, and her mind was going crazy from this loss or the fear of loss, because that's where people live. They live in the fear of loss, which is why we say fear of the unknown, because it's in people's imagination that they fear what they identify with of losing. And so this woman, only 2 weeks to live, you would have thought maybe that she wouldn't bother about those things, but the mind was still attached to the matter. The diamond necklace, obviously if it had been a plastic necklace, she would have thought, oh, let them have it. But it was a diamond necklace, and her mind was going to the new made. Maybe someone had broken in and taken it. The new maid is probably, it was her, because she trusted the others, and thoughts of why she's doing this to me when she can see the state I'm in. And a chap just said to her, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to think about it very deeply, and don't answer immediately. Spend a few days thinking about it until I come back again to see you. And he asked her, what part of you will be missing if you never see the diamond necklace again? And she wasn't allowed to respond there and then. She had to think about it. The word consider, where you actually consider something, you dwell on it for longer and make it a reality of how connected I am from that, and how I created that connection, because she wasn't born with a diamond necklace. It became part of her false identity, her external identity. And so she said that really, after a couple of days of dwelling on it, I really was disassociating myself from its ownership, because that's the key to it all. What's mine is what I'm attached to, what I'm connected to, what has become part of my identity. And she spent the last week or so of her life just giving everything away to people, because nothing mattered except herself, come naked, go naked. But that's the key, even without the body, because it's the body that molds the soul into their belief systems, where you think something matters. And there was another story where a lady was walking up this ladder, and this God was calling her up this ladder, or the angels were calling her up this ladder, and she was going up this ladder, and her child was at the bottom of the ladder, saying, "Mummy, mummy, mummy," and trying to pull her back down, and she would take a step down the ladder, and then the calling of the angels, "No, come, don't look back, just come." And she carried on going up, and eventually she found that state of love that she'd thirsted for. And that's the reality of happiness. It's something that you actually nurture inside of yourself. And when you live your life in a state of non-attachment, so that anything that comes your way passes, is used to some degree, it's passed on, but you don't hoard, because to hoard is to make yourself unhappy. That means you're trying to get more of what you got to make yourself feel more. And the lesson is to lessen the effect of everything that's come my way, and it's just there to be passed on. Don't think of it as mine, because of course there's a mine which is a gold mine, and there's also a landmine, and all these connections are landmines waiting to explode, waiting to destroy your happiness of your belief systems that you may not feel able to let go of. And so that's why they showed this picture or this scenario of the monkey trying to get the apple out of the jug, and he couldn't get past the rim of the jug, the closed part of the jug, so he couldn't get the apple. And a Buddhist came along to him and opened his hand and poured the jug upside down, and the apple fell into his hand. If you're open, then everything comes. If you're closed, you'll make yourself miserable, and you'll always start the quest for happiness. And it's better actually if someone does achieve the conquest, because then they realise there's no happiness, not true happiness. But the actual people that don't have their desires satisfied, very often they spend their whole life in the quest without a conquest. So at least you can achieve a realization point when you have the conquest, because you realize this can't be happiness. This isn't worthy of the title of happiness. This is like you're offering me cow dung and saying this is happiness. So you develop a certain disinterest to people's material goals, and because all they do is panic when it doesn't go their way, when it doesn't come their way, and you're no longer on that hamster treadmill. So nearly half an hour, and that's enough for today. Always half an hour is plenty. Saturation point is normally achieved after about 20 minutes, and you'll get bored of me. So we do a meditation to finish off with, and I hope you can be very happy today in your non-attached way of living, knowing that everything that you need is already inside. You just have to process it. So set back, away from the world outside, including the body, into your form of light, where happiness dwells. I am a subtle being of energy, of light, being looked after by the love, protection and strength of the Supreme Spirit, the one they call the Godfather of all souls. I become aware of myself as light, sparkling light that is disconnected from the I and my of the physical, deeply rooted in the high and mighty of the spiritual. I am light, connected to the Supreme Spirit, the ocean of light. I thirst, I crave for that love, because I know that that quest, that thirst, will create my ultimate conquest, the conquest of love. Removes all the questions of what and why and how and when. I no longer have a single question of doubt in my own mind that if everything goes, if everything is taken away, my love for God, my faith in my own spiritual Father will satisfy me, secure me, is a reliable source of pure divine energy. And so I sit in my content state, content that I need nothing of the outside world. It will be there automatically when I am still, stable and joyful. I originally was light and might, pure and powerful. I am retrieving that which I once had. I am allowing it to be with me, and it will be with me for now and forever. The light of love that God has for me is the same light of love that I have for Him. We are joined, we are attracted through love, the light of love, where peace and happiness reign supreme. Om Shanti. Om Shanti.